Hello, everyone. Bonjour, bienvenue. I want to thank everyone for coming here today, especially the families. Earlier today, my friend and colleague, Senator Boisvenu, introduced Bill S-219 into the Senate of Canada. This proposed legislation will provide victims of crime and their families greater transparency from a criminal justice system that far too often re-victimizes those who have faced tragedy, loss, and trauma. While the processes and systems related to perpetrators of crime are hot topics for debate, consideration for victims is often forgotten. Though this bill does not solve all the issues facing victims of crime here in Canada, it is a very important step towards living up to our nation's reputation as one that stands for the most vulnerable, including victims of crime. In 1991, a 21-year-old girl from Oshawa by the name of Lisa Freeman was tasked with confirming the identity of her father, Roland Slingerland, who had been brutally attacked and murdered. Her father's killer was later convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for 25 years, the standard practice for violent crimes such as this one. However, 20 years into that sentence, the man responsible for tearing Lisa's life apart became eligible for early parole for reasons that were never made clear to Lisa or her family. She was not told what her father's murderer had done to earn the possibility of early parole. She was not told why the parole board was considering releasing the murderer who had taken away the life of an innocent man, her innocent man. She was not told why her government would provide leniency to a criminal more than deserving of his punishment. Later, the same criminal justice system that originally provided justice for Lisa and her family transferred the man that took her father's life to a facility a mere 10 kilometers away from her sister, with no notice being given until 24 hours after the fact. Lisa's story is an important one, but she is not alone. Every day, victims of crime and their families are forced to endure the pain of being left in the dark, the pain of not knowing, the pain of being uninformed, the pain of re-victimization. This bill, if passed into law, will provide victims of crime and their families with a more transparent criminal justice system. It will prioritize the rights of victims beyond the trial process and allow for people like Lisa Freeman to stop being re-victimized by a system that is supposed to be protecting them. I want to take the time to thank Senator Boisvenu, MP Stubbs, and their staff for helping make sure that this important bill can begin its journey to hopefully become law and affecting the lives of Canadians victimized by crime. And of course, I'd like to thank Lisa Freeman, who is with us here today, for her tireless work in advocating for the rights of people just like herself and her family. I've gotten to know Lisa in the recent years, and I'm proud to call her a friend, a patriot, and a great Canadian. Without her, none of this would be possible. Lisa? Excuse me.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Colin, for your kind words. Thank you all for coming today. I don't want to take too much time, so I promise to keep it short. I want to thank Colin, Senator Boisvenu, MP Stubbs, and all of their staff for working during this process with me and with the other families here today. It has been a long time coming, but I'm happy to stand here today and see years of hard work finally result in tangible progress. When I lost my dad, my world was flipped upside down. Like many others who have had to suffer the loss of a loved one because of violent crime, I relied upon the criminal justice system to do what was right. Thankfully, justice was done at the time, but what I did not expect was for the same criminal justice system to re-victimize my family years later. And I know that we are not alone. Now, while this bill won't go back and save my family from being re-victimized, it will protect victims and their families in the future from facing the same uncertainty and repeat trauma that my family has endured. This is why this is so important. So nobody else has got to travel the same road that I have. And although it does not solve every problem with our criminal justice system, this bill will make a tremendous difference in the lives of those victimized by crime. It is time that victims' rights are valued, and this bill is a critical step towards that goal. I look forward to working further with Colin, Senator Boisvenu, and MP Stubbs to ensure that this bill makes its way through the legislative process and eventually becomes law. Though we live in a time of great political division, I hope that members from all parties will see the importance of this bill and support it so that people like me can live their lives without fear of being re-victimized by the criminal justice system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. And next, I'd like to introduce a friend of families who have been victimized. He really doesn't need an introduction in a group such as this, but I'd like to introduce my friend, Senator Boisvenu, to come and say a few words. Senator.
Merci beaucoup d'être ici aujourd'hui. Merci à mes collègues qui m'assistent. C'est un grand honneur que je prends la parole aujourd'hui en compagnie de l'honorable Stubbs, ministre de la Sécurité publique dans le cabinet fantôme de notre parti. Également député de la conscription de Lakeland. Et l'honorable Colin, Carrie, député de la circonscription d'Oshawa. J'aimerais également remercier les deux familles qui nous accompagnent, avec qui j'entretiens des liens, je dirais, plus que d'amitié, depuis plusieurs années, pour ce qui est de Bruno et Darlene, et également pour Mme Freeman, que j'accompagne depuis le printemps dernier, quand son histoire a été apportée à mon attention. Avoir ces deux familles avec nous aujourd'hui, c'est important car ils portent la voix de nombreuses familles de victimes qui ont vécu et qui vivent la même situation et qui ont ce sentiment qu'elles sont secondaires dans notre système de justice. Cet après-midi, comme le disait mon ami Colin, j'ai déposé au Sénat le projet de loi C-219, le projet de loi qui viendra modifier la loi du système correctionnel et la mise en liberté conditionnelle. J'entamerai par la suite cette semaine, jeudi, le discours en deuxième lecture et dans les semaines qui viennent, je presserai le Sénat pour nous assurer que ce projet de loi se dirige le plus rapidement possible vers le Comité des affaires juridiques et constitutionnelles pour procéder à son étude et éventuellement son adoption. Donc, la loi qu'on a présentée, ou que j'ai présentée cet après-midi, vient modifier la loi sur les libérations conditionnelles, particulièrement au niveau des informations que les familles demandent depuis des années. On fait référence, entre autres, à la date d'admissibilité d'examen appliquée aux délinquants relativement aux permissions de sortie. On sait que les criminels ont beaucoup de permissions de sortie et bien souvent, les familles ne sont pas informées. On veut connaître les critères qui font en sorte que ces gens-là sont admissibles, relativement aux sorties à l'extérieur, aux libérations conditionnelles, aux libérations d'office. Donc, de faire en sorte que la Charte des droits des victimes s'applique intégralement à toutes les institutions fédérales, notamment à la Commission, faire en sorte que les victimes soient mieux informées. Donc, ce projet de loi-là est d'initiative citoyenne. Ce sont une citoyenne, des citoyens qui nous ont approchés pour défendre leurs droits. Et l'assassin du père de Mme Freeman a eu le droit à une libération conditionnelle anticipée 5 ans avant la date d'admissibilité, ce qui a pris au dépourvu sa fille, Mme Freeman. Afin de remédier à ce manque de transparence de la part de la Commission de libération conditionnelle, ce projet de loi permettra aux familles d'avoir en leur connaissance toutes les informations que les victimes ont de besoin pour soit se présenter à la Commission, soit contester des décisions. Est-ce que le respect des familles de victimes, est-ce pour le respect des familles de victimes? Plus encore, c'est pour le respect de la Charte des victimes. C'est une loi, c'est une obligation d'informer les victimes. De nombreux témoignages depuis 5 ans m'ont vraiment fait la preuve que cette charte-là doit avoir encore plus de pouvoir et c'est pour ça qu'on dépose ce projet de loi-là, pour faire en sorte que la Charte des droits des victimes ait plus dedans, plus de pouvoir. Pourtant, je viens d'affirmer le droit à l'information est ensaché dans cette loi et pourquoi ces organismes fédéraux-là, dans beaucoup de cas, ne la respecteront pas. Donc, il est temps d'entamer une réforme en profondeur de la Commission de libération conditionnelle et le projet de loi S-219 est un premier pas en avant. On espère, dans l'avenir, aller encore plus loin en termes de réforme pour s'assurer que la place des victimes au niveau de la Commission des libérations conditionnelles soit aussi importante que la place qu'on accorde aux criminels. Donc, j'aimerais remercier mes collègues Colin et Mme Stubbs pour leur appui à ce projet de loi-là Et j'espère que mes collègues du Sénat appuieront ce projet de loi-là parce que je pense que c'est un projet de loi qui fait en sorte qu'ils vont donner confiance aux victimes et dans le système de justice et dans le processus des libérations constitutionnelles qui souvent est trop malmené. Alors, merci beaucoup et j'inviterai Bruno Serre et sa conjointe Darlene s'ils ont quelques mots à vous dire.
Bonjour. Je tiens à remercier le sénateur Pierre-Hugues Boisvenu ainsi que les députés Colin, Carrie et Shannon Stubbs pour l'invitation et en particulier pour leur implication auprès des victimes. Merci également à Lisa Freeman, une victime qui a travaillé si fort pour que la voix de toutes les victimes soit entendue. Je suis Darlene Ryan, belle-mère de Brigitte Serre, et je suis avec mon mari, le père de Brigitte, Bruno Serre. Brigitte a été assassinée pendant qu'elle travaillait à la station Shell à Saint-Léonard il y a presque 15 ans. Elle a été battue et poignardée à 72 reprises. Elle avait seulement 17 ans. Depuis, nous avons dû faire face à tous les niveaux à la complexité du système judiciaire et pénal. Mais de loin, ce qui est le plus difficile à comprendre pour nous, où nous avons le sentiment d'avoir le moins de droits, c'est avec la Commission des libérations conditionnelles. Malgré que ce soit seulement 15 ans depuis l'homicide de Brigitte, l'assassin, à date, a eu droit à 2 audiences reprochées avec la Commission. Nous recevons toujours la convocation sans avoir aucune explication. Pourquoi la Commission a défini ces dates et pourquoi avoir choisi des dates si rapprochées?
Nous espérions avoir un peu de répit entre les audiences. Mais non, nous avons reçu par surprise 2 convocations dans la même année et sans aucune explication. Chaque convocation et chaque audience nous font revivre toutes les émotions que nous gardions au plus profond de nous pour pouvoir avancer dans notre vie. Chaque audience est une torture émotionnelle. Ce projet de loi nous permettrait au préalable, comme parents, de nous préparer émotionnellement et nous permettre d'être informés de la raison pour laquelle la Commission des libérations conditionnelles a déterminé ces dates d'admissibilité et accordé une audience aux criminels. Pour nous, les victimes, avec ce projet de loi, nous aurions le sentiment d'être plus respectés et nous aurions une plus grande confiance dans notre système de justice. Merci.
Bruno, Darlene, sénateur, merci beaucoup pour vos mots. Je voudrais introduire votre critique, le ministre fantôme, Shannon Stubbs. I'd like to introduce to you Shannon Stubbs, our Shadow Minister for Public Safety, to come up and say a few words.
Thanks, Colin. Good afternoon. I really am grateful to be able to join my colleagues today for the important announcement about Senator Boisvenu's legislation. The senator, as you may know, has been a tireless advocate for victims of crime for many years, and he has already led to many meaningful changes in the justice system, and I hope that this will be yet one more. I want to thank MP Colin Carrie for originally bringing forward this significant piece of legislation. It just makes common sense changes to parole decisions to ensure transparency for victims and for their families. But it is really because of the victims and their surviving family members who are victims too that we're here today. I myself am a loved one of a murder victim, but since becoming the Shadow Minister for Public Safety, I have had the both immensely sad and very inspiring opportunity to speak with many victims of crime, including Lisa, Darlene, and Bruno, who are here with us today. Really imagine this. Out of their and their families' tragic and horrific experiences, Lisa, Darlene, and Bruno, joined with so many people across the country, have become driving forces for change to ensure that victims and survivors are seen and heard in the criminal justice, corrections, and parole systems. These crucial changes will also work to better protect the safety and the security of all Canadians everywhere and in all their communities. It seems to me that the very least that should be expected from the parole board is transparency about decisions about potentially dangerous criminals being released. And the bottom line is that victims, families, and communities have a right that we must all work to protect and ensure is served, to know how the parole board arrives at these decisions that impact them. On another note, it's unfathomable to me that victims' families have been denied the right to appear at parole hearings, even by video link, during the past several months. While school classes, medical appointments, and even Parliament managed to conduct themselves by video link, this government couldn't figure out a way for victims and families to participate in parole hearings by video. And it was only a couple of weeks ago, and frankly, only after months of victims' family members, these heroes here, advocating publicly that the change was made. Ensuring the safety of Canadians should be the priority job of a government. And victims and their families should not have to fight and beg and plead to participate. The Victims' Bill of Rights actually explicitly says they can. The system should not be a barrier to them, and it should not add more to their lifetime of grief and pain. The system should not re-victimize these families over and over. And I frankly think that most Canadians would be shocked to know that the parole board isn't currently required by law to explain how the dates and the decision-making around hearings and around releases are determined for a criminal's parole. This bill fixes that. The rights of victims and of law-abiding innocent Canadians must always come first. I just want to close by saying all Canadians should be so grateful to people like Lisa, like Darlene, and like Bruno. It really is amazing and overwhelming to try to think of, just even conceive of their strength, really imagine their strength, their grace, their resilience, to take their own tragic experiences that impact their lives forever and to turn them into a passionate fight to help and to advocate for others. And Senator Boisvenu has done the same. So thank you again so much, Senator Boisvenu, and to MP Colin Carrie for spearheading this very, very meaningful work. I will do anything I can to help support and see it through.
Thank you very much, Shannon, and thank you so much for your support. As Shannon said, this is about the families, the victims, and it's about respect for those who have been re-victimized by our own system. And with that, I'd like to open the floor to any questions that you may have for us. We're all available to answer the questions. Thank you.
So we'll start with questions, starting with a question on the phone. Quick reminder, one question, one follow-up per reporters. Nous allons maintenant prendre les questions, commençant par les questions au téléphone. Un petit rappel, une question de suivi. Opérateur, avons-nous une première question?
There are no questions registered at this time. Il n'y a pas de questions pour le moment. J'aimerais vous retourner la parole.
We'll take questions from the room. David?
Hi, everyone. David Thurton from CBC News. Thanks for joining us and making yourself available. Lisa, as I understand it, you weren't allowed or able to speak at that hearing. What would you have said if you had the opportunity to share? Yeah.
Thank you for your question. I was denied participation at the day parole hearing in April for the man who axed my father to death. So I would have delivered an impact statement that I wrote, trying to capture how this impacted my life for all these years, but I was denied that opportunity. I was one of the first group of people in Canada who were banned from attending these hearings, and it was 5 weeks later that they implemented phone use. So I missed that too, and as Shannon said, it's only been the last few weeks that they've had video implementation, even though it was available for the offender from the beginning. So I would have just brought to the parole board what it was like, what it's been like for my whole life and my family to live with this crime and to try to fit such an abnormal event into some sort of normal life, but we were completely denied our opportunity. We could only submit a statement by file to his file.
And so I'm just thinking about my question here. So just give me
That's
me
fine.
a second
That's
here.
fine.
What? Okay. Yeah. But I guess the question I would have asked is so you would have shared how this impacted your life
Right.
For more than almost 30 years, right?
Right.
What would you have hoped would have been the outcome? What would you hope? What would you have said? What would you have hoped would be the decision the parole
Okay. Well,
board
the
made?
decision was day parole was granted.
Okay.
So obviously the outcome I would have preferred was that this is a critical juncture, day parole. He's been in prison, incarcerated for many years. This was my opportunity to bring to the table, not just written word, but myself in person as a real person who has suffered because of this crime and grew up my whole adult life was with this crime, living with this crime. I was denied that. He applied for full parole 6 months later. And again, the parole board denied me, not because of COVID, but because they had the authority to do so, a hearing at all. They made a paper decision and wouldn't tell me the date of that, except that it was in October. So I had been denied for COVID reasons in April, and then I was denied for no other reason other than they could do it to me, participation in a hearing. So it's just like, you just wonder at what point they say that they include you in all these decisions, but to me, I need to be included the way I need to be included, because for some people, participation in this process is very important. Other people, they don't, but for me, I have an obligation to participate. And I have been denied twice by the Parole Board of Canada. And I do hold them accountable for re-traumatizing me and my family during just a very difficult time.
And were you against the decisions that they made?
The decision for day parole?
Yes.
Of course. He was denied full parole in October, but that was only because an all-out media assault by myself to try to bring this to everyday Canadians and the general public, and with the support of victims of crime across Canada, to say this is wrong. Not just that an axe murderer is being, up for full parole, but wrong with what the system's doing to me. Because I have always said that if you manage to still be standing after the initial crime, the system will quickly bring you to your knees. And they have absolutely no problem doing that to people, because they know what they're doing. Because we have spoken, we have told them. It doesn't matter. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll check one more time if we have any questions on the phone. Je vérifie maintenant si nous avons d'autres questions au téléphone. Opérateur?
Il n'y a toujours aucune question au téléphone.
Il a fait la conférence de presse. This concludes the press conference. Thank you very much.